I'm Clint, and welcome to Swatch's Art Livestream number 72. This is a special draw-along lesson where we're going to practice together on some art stuff that we talked about on the last livestream. This is also a different setup than I'm used to using with the arrangement of the cameras and the layout on my screen, so we're going to just take a couple of minutes and make sure that everything looks good and is running properly, and everybody is ready to get started before we just immediately jump into it. So if you're watching this on recording, you might want to scrub ahead a little bit, but those joining in live, feel free to make yourselves comfortable. We'll take a second here before we really jump in. Okay, it looks like my camera is a little off. I'm a little off to the side there. Apologize for the main camera here being a little low quality. I have my better camera be set up to actually show the sketch pad when we jump over to that. If you're new to the channel, then welcome. I am, of course, your host, Clint Cearley. I'm best known for my work with Magic the Gathering, Dungeons & Dragons, and my commercial work on that side. But I love teaching art, I love improving, and this episode is going to be basically me practicing and just kind of showing you some stuff that I want to practice and get better at, and invite you to just draw along with me, and I'll kind of talk you through what I'm thinking. And hopefully you can pick up on it as well, maybe adopt it into your own study habits. We already have 16 people on stream, which is awesome. Thank you very much for taking the time to come out here and join me. We've got people from California and Utah and Spain, both sides. All right. Thank you again. So please don't have me to be drawing by myself. Have your sketchbook. And have your pencil or your pen. I'll be drawing with pen. And I think there's some advantages to that. This is also going to be most appropriate for people who have some level of drawing proficiency. This isn't necessarily a beginner's lesson. And it is also helpful if you have spent a little time doing some perspective studies. I might talk about it a little bit as we're going into it, but it's not really going to be a lesson on that. It's more just some stuff to practice. So, kind of a back view. I want to get back to drawing kind of why I got into it. I've been doing commercial work for, over a decade now with illustration, and I gotta say, it's really great on one hand, but on the other hand, doing some of the really big, complex, detailed images with clients that drag on for multiple months, where you're just doing iteration after iteration and a lot of detail passes, it kind of grinds down a bit. And that's not really why I got into art. I got into it because I just like drawing and I like making stuff up. And that's what we want to do here. So with this, it's just kind of getting back to, let's get better at drawing from imagination and improve those skills and help us to train our brain to think the right way. Michael says, you won't be able to see us drawing though. I tell you what, if you guys enjoy this, then I would happily go forwards in the future with having maybe a participant or two where we could jump to their cameras to show what they're doing or talk back and forth, so it's just not me yapping the whole time. Yes, you can participate live, Alessandra. Yeah, please do. And, of course, if you're not on the Facebook group, or if you are later, if you want to show some of the stuff you've worked on, great. If it doesn't turn out that well, it's not a big deal. It's just practice. It's not necessarily everything that you do you're going to share. That's all right. Okay, so let's try this other setup here. So this is a setup that, just the screen setup that I've got. And up here, obviously, you can see me. And this is just the page that I had open in Photoshop. It shows you, oh no, that's not on your screen. That's an overlay. Hang on, let me move that. So this is sort of what prompted it, and the exercise that we're going to be sort of building off of, and that is I did this drawing of this little cart from a reference photo, and I did that in pen just from observation of the photo. Then I went on and I drew these other ones without a reference. These were just spaceships that happen to be on the same page. They don't really have anything to do with it. But over here, these guys were other images that I drew without reference, just after studying and drawing that one. Again, without any pre-drawing, just with the pen. And the idea is that if you can study one thing and understand its root forms and the idea of the way that it's constructed, that you can then go on and apply that knowledge to other similar things. And if you understand how to draw forms properly, then you can rotate that object in your mind. Today I was actually listening to and partially watching some videos by Proko. Many of you probably familiar with his videos, where he was interviewing the master drawer Kim Young-ji. I think I said that correctly. And he is well known for doing really elaborate pen drawings with no pre-drawing. And I was listening to his take on how he goes about that, and it's basically the same thing. So if you want to go check out that video from Proko, that's a good watch. But it's essentially what I'm going to be doing and what I personally want to practice and what I'm going to be showing you here. It's like improv. Yes, and being on camera is improv. I haven't recorded this. Oh yeah, I got my M&Ms. So, if you're going to be joining, then make sure you have your sketchbook and your pen or your pad. Have some water nearby, what I often forget. Just trying to get comfortable in this chair. This is not my normal chair. It's just a little cheap, hard thing that I happen to have nearby because I'm still moving in and I don't have everything in the house yet. Okay, so let's talk through. Oh yeah, I had some notes over here. Let me pull those over so I don't forget something. Now, I will just set these back here so I can glance at it if I need it. If you have not been drawing in a while, welcome to the party. I have been tied up with other work and the renovation on this house and moving, and I have hardly drawn anything in about the last 2 weeks. So I am very rusty. It's going to take me a little bit before I can really get into it, and I feel like I'm starting to get, my footing. But I wanted to give you also a realistic look that, hey, you can be out of practice, and this is a good way to maybe ease into it. And just that is how you get back in practice. You just got to go do it. So I'll show you real quickly. I keep delaying it out a little bit, but I'm getting my head in the right space. I'll show you what I have on hand here. If I can... Oh, no, that window is covered up. I cannot see what you're seeing. Also, let's make that a little smaller. There we go. Computer is slowing down a little bit, trying to run multiple cameras and inputs at the same time. Okay, so I don't know which oil I'll probably be using. I'm thinking I might use the hot pink and the orange for some guidelines. And then in order to example and point things out, necessarily that's really going to be the one I'm drawing with. And then I've got a variety of different micron Pigma sort of pens here. You have your 08, which is your fatter, thicker point. And then you have your 05, which is probably too small to really be using on this screen, but it's, much smaller. And that camera is not great, so it might be a little blurry. But again, this is about you drawing as well, not just you watching me. This one's a little more like a brush tip on the end of that, although it's it's hard. It's not like a flexible brush tip. And then if I do need like a red pen or just basic drawing pencils, I've got some of those as well. And you're welcome to shoot me questions, whether it's on this topic or related topics, because I'm sure we'll probably have some pauses here and there. And if you got questions, make sure you just put at swatches at the beginning of your live chat comment, and then it will flag that in yellow for me, and I will try to address that from during the course of the program. But thank you again for everyone joining. I think we probably give people about enough time to get in. We're 13 past. Okay. Got 44 people. So there's got to be a better layout on my screen so that I can see everything that I need. Oh, yeah, getting a delay. Hang on. Okay, computer. Yeah, I've got like a 2-second delay on my mouse here. Hang on. It is very difficult to go open the right file right now. Okay. Seems like I haven't had this computer for that long, but I was thinking back and I actually have. So it's probably needs to be updated sometime soon. Okay, so before we start drawing from a reference image, we're going to just start by doing some exercises. Okay, this is what we need to do. We're going to just loosen up, get our brain in the right place. Again, I need to move that out of the way so I can see your camera. Move, 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 move. There. You're underprepared. You don't have any M&Ms. Yeah, I like having something to snack on there if I want it, even though I might not, actually eat on it while I'm going. But I want something to snack on that's crunchy. I particularly like crunchy things, and, a bottle of water. So we're going to start, not with that. We don't really need the guideline. I'm going to play around with this graphic one. Again, this is just exercises. I don't have anything really super prepared here. And then let me watch where I am on the camera that it looks okay. We're going to start by doing some ovals and some circles. So what I want to do is just create a series of them where they get wider and wider. Until eventually they're basically a circle. Okay. And then I want to do that the other direction. So what we're trying to do is get our brain to start thinking three-dimensionally. And we want to be able to rotate objects three-dimensionally. And that might be a complex object like you see over on that screen over there with the carts. And you look at it and you go, oh man, that's so complex. But it's really not as complex if you can break it down into the basic forms like cubes, cylinders, cones, that sort of thing. And how do you break those down? Well, you break those down into their individual shapes, which is ovals, ellipses, basically something, circles, diamonds, polygons, that sort of thing. So that's what we're practicing. We're wanting to get so that we can rotate any of the basic forms in any direction, and then we can equate that and make it more complex to turn it into any kind of object that we want. Okay. And then a good one, just to kind of loosen up, is to do like a flower. Yeah, I can tell I'm not loose yet. My brain's not there yet, and my muscles haven't warmed up in my hand from this position yet. So that's why it can be a really good idea to start with just a blank piece of paper, do some little warm-up drawings, do some multi-size circles. Circles are particularly good because it requires you to balance out your muscles so that they are even both up and down and left to right. And it requires a lot of control. So that's what we're doing quite a few circles with. And you can see if you're going to be doing one very big, then start by pre-drawing the form, and then start laying down the brush. It's kind of like getting into the momentum of it first, and then using that. Okay, now what we can do is maybe do some diamonds, because these would be one of the planes of a cube, and cubes are going to be really important. We're going to just get those more and more opened up as we go. And if it's not perfect, he's not perfect. He's a little wonky, but you know what? That's why we're practicing. So, no biggie. Now let's start by trying to put some of these into some actual forms. So I could do it's a cylinder that we're tilting. And this is where perspective comes in a little bit, that we can use our knowledge of perspective. And let's say maybe it's a open box. That we want to shift a little bit. Now he's more closed. Oh, I'm running off the camera. Sorry, I'm not used to looking at the camera up there. Okay, I'll get into it. Hey guys, and we've got a bunch of people here. Kayla, good to see you. Bas, DeVries, Alessandra, Jaden, Thomas, Medina. Welcome everybody. Okay, let me just turn it this way, then we can use more of the paper. Oh, I was trying to think of what my other practice was. So we're going to do a practice here where we will get a box. This is a good one. I think I've mentioned this one before. We're going to do the top of a box. Draw down the little sides. And then what we want to do is turn that box. So that on the other hand, on the other side, it's basically going to be the same thing. Let me shift that over. There we go. But here, it's going to be turning like that. So now we have more of this side and less of that side. And this is a good exercise to make you really start thinking three-dimensionally. And then we're going to turn it again. What I'm paying attention to is right now this angle right here. Now you could pick any of them and work off of that. And that's how you work from imagination. Generally you find whatever your first line is going to be kind of your anchor point. It's literally going to determine the perspective and the angle of everything else. So what you want to pick is a simple line on a simple form if possible. Sometimes it's not. Like on a face, it could be a little more difficult. But for this, that's a really easy line. And I'm thinking about like this. This right here, we'll use a different color so it makes more sense. Think of that like inside of a circle. Okay? And then that line is at this angle. But as that box rotates, that line is going to change to something like this, which is what we have right there. And then it's going to move to eventually like this, and then this, and then this, until the point where it then becomes that line, right? You're going to rotate him around so that this plane on that back side becomes this front plane. And so the first line I made was this one, so I established that, and that told me the angles that these other ones need to be at, based on that, because they're all right angles, it's a cube. And then this one, I just made sure that the angle that this one was at, which was about here, that this one was a little less. So he's here. He's not quite as angled. He's a little more up and down. And then I want to move to that next step, and what's it going to be? It's going to be more like this, right? So over here, I want to get, I can grab this point right here and say, well, it's going to be right about here with that point. And then I want to be up and down about like that. And then it's going to come over. And now what's it going to do? Is it going to be a diamond anymore? No, because it's going to be just about to us, which means that this side is basically going to be flat to us. Or it could even be slightly further out, depending on our, basically our camera. That side has disappeared if we want to rotate it that far. And so now we don't see three planes, we just see the two, because that one's basically at us. Then that line is going to start curving back the other way. And that's basically a mirrored copy, right? But we want to see a little more of that side right there. And then it's going to start making the V on the other side. Like this. And that's the basic premise of what's going on here. And then you just start making it more and more complex. And then you start turning it into trucks and people and everything else. Any questions on that? Does that make sense, or do we need to go back over something with that? Feel free to drop it into the comments. Oh, computer. Move this over a little bit so I can see the comment. Okay. Okay, now let's do a similar thing where we're going to do a series of cubes coming downwards and upwards. Yeah, it's really, it is Kim sort of practice. A while back, I was watching a video of his, and I just thought, if you wanted to be able to do that, how would you practice? And I sat down and I basically wrote out an art course to teach people how to do that. But I wanted to be, do it myself first. So this is me sort of just sharing what I want to be practicing on and, going that direction. So here, let's do a cube here. Let's see. We're going to be looking up at the cube. Yeah, maybe I could put some guidelines in here. Let's say eye level is right about here. Then everything over that you're going to be looking up at. I think you can see that orange a little bit. Okay. And then everything under that we're going to be looking down at. And eventually, as we go forwards, we won't be doing these guidelines, but I'm going to put the guidelines here for right now to kind of indicate what I'm thinking in my head and what the goal is so that you can be following along with me. I think we'll eventually go without. But there is going to be like a stack of cubes that would do something like this. Now it's doing that sort of shape because this would be closest to us and then this would be further away. So we're actually having 2-point perspective. 1 point of perspective is going up that way as we're looking up at it, and then there would be a point of perspective coming down. Now you notice I'm just freehanding this because this is sketching from imagination. That curve isn't perfect. I didn't use any guidelines. I'm stylizing this a little bit, and that's okay for this. For what we're doing right now, that's okay. There are other times when you need to be super accurate, and you do need to run all the guidelines, and you make sure everything is right. But right now, we're just sketching. Okay, so you could also think that there is a vanishing point right there. Why right there? Because that's the eye level. Vanishing point's always on eye level. So everything facing downwards that is parallel to what we consider plane of the ground is wanting to go here. And so I'm putting in the guidelines right now just so that you can understand the thought process behind what's going on here. And if you need to put these in right now, that's fine. Cool. Do it. If that's where you are, then do it. If it was just me, I probably wouldn't because I'm trying to skip that step. But let's take a look at it. It's almost like as if you were looking at a skyscraper, but we take segments out of it. So we've got side of a cube that we're looking up at. Boom. And then he comes down. And he's going back. But then why do we stop? Why don't we see the bottom of him? Well, because there's another cube in front of him, right? Overlapping. Now that is really important right there. If you are drawing from imagination, especially, and we're talking about with pen, right? Because we can't erase this. You've got to be thinking about what's in front. And this is something I personally need to practice a lot. Because honestly, that's probably not the best place to start. The best place to start would be the ones right here, because they're the ones in front. Generally, you want to work front to back because it's much easier to do it that way than to think about this way and who stops where with the overlapping. There's a lot more thought. So that's probably not the best way to do it, but I started this way, so that's what we're going to do. But that's just another thing when you're drawing with pen from imagination, is you got to be thinking a step ahead of who is going to be overlapping him, and you've got to leave room for that and then come back in. Kim does that really well in his artwork, is that he will leave spots white, and then he'll come back and overlapping, and then he can meet the lines back up if he needs to. So here we've got another cube. And then I might just jump to the spacing is about half a cube. I'm just kind of looking at that. Maybe about here. And then these aren't perfect cubes. They're looking like they're probably a little taller than they are wide. So he's probably coming down to about there. And then I could put the back, and now he wants to run to that horizon line, right? Again, it's not perfect perspective, but it's close enough for right now. And again, about half a square down, and then here. And then I can run him back, and I'm just thinking about how far back that guy is. He's about like that. And if you need to do that, you can too. See, like, I'm looking at that, and I'm thinking, okay, well, if I follow that down, that's going to be about here. It looks about that thick. You can make a dot. That's where I need to go to, right? And then I can connect those two up. And then as you get better, what you can do is just stop using the dot, and you can just make the line. And then we can just connect that like this. And then we'll move down a little bit more. And then that's where we can't see him anymore, up underneath that. And then we'll just add a little one there on the bottom to fill it out. Ta-da. And that's going to be really good practice going forwards. Of course, this is where you can get things like, you know, you can do this sort of thing. You know, and start turning it into subjects. Right. And so those, again, just are the basic blocks. And what you're thinking about is I set the perspective, you know, with one block. And then I'm going to just start applying that to the other blocks. Okay. And why not just use the back of the paper? It's pretty thick paper. So this pen is actually a little thicker, a little heavier than I like. I thought it had a bit of a finer tip to it. I might switch to somebody else. I've got the SC. No, he was chisel tip. That's not what I'm looking for. I think I'll just use this 8. Okay. Questions, comments, guys? Anything we need to run back over? Okay, let's do... Here's some good practice. Let's do this one. So here what we want to do is... you know what? Let's... No, come over here. I'm just going to move the Photoshop one out of the way a little bit more. There we go. It's where we're focusing on this right now. So we'll just leave more screen for the drawing pad. Okay. Oh, so here. We'll do a guideline. Let's use the red one. Just feel like using the red one. And imagine a box. Now this is something that's very consistent throughout Kim's work, is he imagined things inside of boxes. And it gives you a volume and a perspective. Because boxes are one of the easiest things to imagine three-dimensionally. And if you can start imagining how you would put things in boxes and the volume it would take up and how it's angled in there, then that can make complex subjects a lot easier to put in a three-dimensional environment. Any books you'd recommend for a learning perspective? Man, I haven't actually looked at a learning perspective book in a long time. I forget which ones I looked at, but they've got to be about 40 years old by this point. No, I'd probably about any book for a learning perspective is going to give you essentially the same information. Possibly look at even some like how to draw comics perspectives books. I'm sure those are out there. There's also plenty of courses on learning perspective. That's good. If you haven't looked at, if for just a overview of the topic, you can watch my video on art fundamentals, drawing perspective, where I just kind of give you the overview of the ideas of it, but it's not in depth. It doesn't have lessons or anything. But ask around. I'm sure somebody has jumped into some more recently than I have. So here we have this. Now what we want to do with this, and this is simple, is start putting things inside of it. So we could have a box in here, right? Now I'm thinking of this as a three-dimensional box. And how he's sitting in here. And then I could think about, what I want to do is basically just create a collection of basic forms and put them inside of this volume and get used to how they interact. And so I just want to start making this sort of variety of different shapes. A variety of different forms. So maybe there's another one here. Let's see, I didn't work that out right. But we will just change it and adapt. Okay. Now it's a wedge. So you find a way just to make it work. I've never had to do this sort of practice and talk someone through it at the same time. A little more difficult. And you don't be drawing it the same way that I am. Don't do the same thing that I'm doing. Just do your own box and fill it with your own stuff. I can tell my brain's not into it yet. I'm working too hard to try to do what I'm doing. Okay, well, that's a pretty bad start, but we'll move forward. Yeah, that red's a little strong. So what we're going to do is change the volume. And here's where we can get a lot of different kind of feelings from the camera angle. And that is, you know, even with this box, you could have this box as being like this, and it doesn't have much stylization to it or anything. Or you can have it this kind of curved, almost fisheye sort of hyper perspective, where it's got more like, you know, big kind of swoopy perspective lines. It's still the same box, but it's which camera you're using. This one's a much wider curved lens. Like this would be a fairly flat lens if you were looking from the side, and this one would be like a much more curved lens. So it's going to distort things along that that curvature so that you get more like this. This is like if you're looking out of one of those little peepholes in a door in a hotel, right? You look out and everything's like really rounded and distorted, and you get that fisheye appearance. And this is more like your actual eyeball, where it's going to keep things fairly straight. It's not going to distort it very much. So with this one, we're going to just do another box, but instead of looking down and everything like this, we're going to be looking up at it. So it's going to be about here. Yeah, close enough. You miss my videos? Well, I'm glad they are missable, but they're always out there. You can go watch them anytime. FGR, thank you. I appreciate the compliments. How am I? I'm doing pretty good. Thanks, William. I am in my house now, which is pretty good. I've only been in here a couple of days, but it's still mostly a construction site. There's just tools and drop cloths and paint cans and just stuff everywhere, except for this room, and then all my stuff is thrown into this one room. Okay, so here we've got this one that we're looking up at, and we'll start in the front and work our way back because, like we said, that actually makes more sense. And I'm going to switch back to this one because I think I can only need to draw it once here. It's a little fatter. It looks better on camera, I think. Although it's a little heavy if I was just to be sketching with it. I'd probably switch over to something smaller. So even when what you're doing with this is just simple practicing, right? But you can turn these things into anything. I mean, you could turn these into buildings. You could turn these into some sort of engine, or, you know, a close-up view of a microprocessor or whatever. You could turn them into robots. You could turn them into people. The idea is just that you're drawing multiple forms in a volume matching perspectives. And that's the important thing. I'll just say that he has an angle on him right there. He goes back. I don't know, this isn't fancy. It's not like it's turning into anything amazing. But that's not the point. The point is just to practice. Brain training. Okay, what's something else we could do? Same sort of thing that we did with the cubes, right? These guys. We want to do the same sort of thing with a cylinder. But instead of going up and down, let's go left and right. So the cylinder is laying on its flat side, and we will look at it as it's kind of going along in front of us. So the one in the front that's closest to us is actually going to look kind of odd because he's just going to be flat top and bottom, and it's going to be curved on both sides because we're looking at it straight on. But then if you want to do multiple of them and get them ready, you could do them like that. Isn't that right? And we're playing in a fisheye lens on this one. Wouldn't necessarily be that way if you're looking at it. There we go. Den asked, "Hey Clint, any thoughts on checking out Lightbox Expo this year?" I forget when Lightbox Expo is, but if I were to go to an event, that would be up my list. I've heard really good things about it. I know several of the guys that will be there, or at least in passing, I know them. And I think if you were to go to one, it's probably a really good choice. One of the things that they have a really like high level of artists that go to it, that I want to say vend, but show at it. So it's a good one probably if you want to see a lot of really high class work, and that's about what I know. I've never been there, so I wouldn't know. But yeah, when is that? Do you know, Dan? I haven't looked that up in a while. Something else you can do is just some practice of putting three-dimensional forms together. So you do one something like that, and then you put another, just kind of like they're all free-floating in space together. So overshot that a little bit, but you know, I'm not going to stress over it. It's just a sketch. If I was concentrating more, I wouldn't. Yeah, no, say that and I'll do it again. But that's what I need to pay attention to. See right here? I've made the same mistake multiple times. I've already noticed it, where I'm overshooting that corner right there. And then I've done the same thing on this corner. I've done it on that corner. So I really need to be paying attention to that. I'm overestimating that angle a little bit. But we'll throw a sphere in there. Something resembling a sphere. Oh, this actually, right here, this reminds me of something we can do. Just a little cube practice. Okay, so let's do this one. This one's kind of good. This is where we can start moving it. Oops, I bumped the table. We can start moving it into a actual object. So let's grab a new piece of paper. Now, we're going to just use our cubes and turn them into a series of books. So the basic book we're going to be doing is like this. Fucking hell, it looks easy. Why can't I do it? Yeah, well, That's kind of life, isn't it? It looks easy. Shouldn't be that hard. It is. Okay, so let's practice our book to begin with. And then I'm going to get a spam call. Because that is about the only kind of calls I get right now. No. Oh. I want to talk to your machine. Okay. The thing with living with a cat, you have to scratch your nose a lot. Okay, so our basic form is a cuboid. That's the right word, right? It's not actually a cube, but it has all the planes of a cube. It's just at different proportions. I think it's a cuboid. So our cuboid is going to be something like this. No, that's no. It's a little long for our cuboid. Let's adjust it. I think it'll be more like that. That seems about right. So we're thinking about doing a thick, old-timey book, right? So that's going to be the basic form of it. And the thing is that we can do pretty well. Actually, here, let's do a practice. Let's do a practice with the cuboid, and then we will move into turning him into a little more complex book. So for this one, we can do a like a wheel of cuboids, where we're going to have, it's like this. We're going to see the tops of them, maybe not that many of them, and then they're going to go down, like that, right? Okay, so, but we got to pick one to start with, and we're not going to do the pre-drawing. We're not going to do our guidelines. So I'll go ahead and just do the one that's right here at me. And he's going to set the perspective. And I'll try to draw every line just once. Right about there. And then I'm going to have at least one here. Maybe I'll do the one on the other side. I've got to follow the same perspective, which is pretty strong. I didn't really plan that out too well. And if you want to do the other ones like this, do like that. I'm thinking about the outside of this would basically make some a kind of circle. Yeah, it's a little more difficult because we're actually trying to create something here that's kind of symmetrical. Okay, and then that's the difficult part. And then we can just run down our perspective lines. And they're all going to essentially right there. And then the distance between those two are going to be about the distance between these. That one is a little far. That was too much, but oh no, we'll try to improve it as we go. And of course, we can't see the perspective on him because we're looking straight at him. But we improved it there. It should be more like that one. See, this one was too much. Okay, so that's a good little practice with a cuboid. Michael asked, in the first couple of years that you started to take art seriously, what was your mindset, aspirations, what were your struggles or downfalls, and how have those changed over time? When I started taking it more seriously, I fully intended to become more of a classic artist with traditional media, traditional painting. I didn't really have any interest in doing commercial work. I had some interest in getting into like concept art for films, and that's still an interest of mine. But that was my main aspiration, just to make a living as a traditional artist. Mindset. I'm trying to remember where I was at where my mindset was at when I was in my teens. Um, I would just basically self study, just practicing a lot, and um, I didn't know much about making a living doing anything. So there was a lot of ignorance there. And it was just me wanting to draw and improve. I just wanted to be better. I just kept wanting to be better and wanting to be better. Over time, uh, it does change because once you start making a living doing commercial work, your relationship with art changes. And I think that's probably been the biggest change, is that it goes from being this passion and this hobby to being this thing that you do in order to pay your bills. And you try to keep that same love in there, but it's a switch in the relationship. I almost want to say, like, a bit like switching from being friends to being, a boyfriend or a girlfriend. It's a switch in the relationship. I mean, a lot of the same gist is the same. You still interact in a lot of the same ways, but there's different ways that you handle stuff now, and there's different stuff on the line. If you make a mistake, you can't get away necessarily with the same stuff. And as it's progressed, also realizing that your interests do mature and change over time. Not that the earlier interest was immature, but sometimes once you do something, you're ready for something new. Which is why I'm moving into like doing this sort of thing again. I want to be able to draw more from imagination and do it better. I want to be able to draw more things at a higher quality than I currently can. And I want to get to where I have the opportunity to do some just drawing from imagination and somehow commercialize that, to make that more profitable instead of just doing really long, overly detailed images. I would love to be able to make a living not having just to do those, because over time those are just kind of grinding me down a little bit. So I had a bunch of answers to it, just kind of giving you an overview of doing this job for 10 years. Okay, so now that we've drawn our cuboids a little bit, let's draw. Oh, we need to do our kind of a little study here. So here we can have our book. Now I'm going to turn this one to us a little bit. Now see, now that I'm trying to draw it a little better, I'm going to start adding a little more flavor into my lines. Now in a book, there's an old one that has the cover like that. You actually have that little space in there before the pages start. And that binding sticks out a little bit past the pages. And the pages round, they don't flatten out. So we're going to have that little curvature there. Then the spine, the cover sticks past them a little bit. And then we're going to let that come down. That seems about right. The inside of the pages are going to be inset from that, again, all the way around. It's hard to do really thin lines with this. It's not a super thin pen. But We want to indicate a little thickness with that cover. We'll put that there. And then just for a little flavor, we can add some of the, as it's coming down, it can have some of those little, I don't know what they call them, ribs? I'm not sure what the proper term is for that little reinforcement on the sides of a old book. Now I'm thinking about that angle. I keep getting that angle wrong today. So something like that. I think I'll do like 3 of those. That's pretty close. So he's a little squatter than I intended, but that's okay. And then we might add those little things that go on the corner to help protect the corners. I can indicate that over there on that side as well. And then a little indication of the thickness there. And along that side too. We might add some little scuff marks or something. And on the cover, we could just do like a, you can put whatever you want. Maybe I'll do like a little globe looking thing. And then verbiage, unreadable verbiage. Okay, so that's sort of the book I have in mind, and we can change up the shapes and stuff. I mean, it's all binding, but those little thingies right here, they don't really do them anymore. I don't think I have a book around here that has them. But they'd have like an extra strip of leather inside that would wrap around, that would give it extra support. Now, they don't all have to be that detailed, and I won't be. We'll do some a little faster here. Oh, helps when you don't smudge your finger into it. Okay. And then what we would do is we're going to just have a series of books falling. Woo! We'll keep it simple and have most of them closed. T.D. Davis says, how do you approach environment-heavy illustrations? I'm having trouble imagining depth and perspective while creating a good composition. How do you transition between the two mindsets? I'm managing depth and perspective. Trying to think of a simple way to boil that answer down. A good thing to keep in mind is, where do you want the person to look? So the environment should be leading the eye around, right? So if you have, your scene and the focal point is here, and you got to know what your focal point is, all right? Because everything is going to be built around supporting that focal point. And you got to think about what your composition is. So your composition can be based on a lot of different things. A go-to option with a scene, like a environment scene, is like this sort of thing. You want to lead your eye into that, or it could be something like things being spiraled, or it could be radiating lines, which is real easy with perspective because you just put the focal point towards the middle, and then you line up all the buildings and the streets and all that stuff to line up to it. If you haven't watched my last live stream, I actually went through how to address a complex scene. Somebody asked that, and I kind of went through that on the last live stream, so you can watch that one, and I go into it a little bit. But that would be a good one, is thinking about what your composition pattern is. Is it radiating lines? Is it a curvature? There even is a lot of letters and numbers that work well for composition, like A and V and X and D and C, and there's a lot of letters that you can use as compositional tools, and same thing with different numbers that will guide where you need to place things. Other things to keep in mind is separating your scene into a foreground, midground, and background, and trying to get those three can help. All right, well, that's just a real quick answer, but hopefully you find that helpful. And that is not the pen I meant to pick up. I have another book coming here. I'm going to just have some of those pages opened as the book's kind of going down there. I have a big book back here. Now, I keep trying to think of a different angle to put them at. I don't want to just keep using same angles. Here, I can tell my brain when I stop talking, my brain will switch over so much easier. I looked it up. Those ribs on a leather book spine are called hubs. Things I learned today. Thank you, Michael. I had no idea. I've always noticed them. I thought they give it a nice little silhouette with those bumps along the side, but didn't know. Drew in some loose leaf paper for flair, and that's also a good brain teaser. Any tips or just for gesture and figure drawing? One of the best things that you can do if you're not very good at gesture and figure drawing, go and watch some good instruction. I would absolutely recommend Proco. So just let somebody explain the thought process to you and let you watch somebody who knows what they're doing do it, and then let them, walk you through some. Proco, Proko. I think his last name is Prokostenko, but he goes by Proco. And he's got a bunch of videos. He would be the go-to option on improving your figure and anatomy drawing. And do that, and then I would recommend doing the timed figure drawings from a site. I think somebody said like Quick Poses. Yeah, and then you can just put in how many minutes or seconds that you want to do it, and then just set aside a certain amount of time. You can do that, 15, 20 minutes a day or whatever, and you're going to get better a lot quicker. Than if you were just trying to do self-study, because the tendency would be to take a lot more time, and that's not what gesture drawing is about. It should be about doing really quick impressions of the subject matter and not doing detailed anatomy drawing. But there is a time for that. You just need to decide for yourself which one you're actually doing. That angle is off, but life goes on. Let's have one that's maybe opened up a lot more. And then this is going to be curving out. I'll use wavy lines there to indicate, bunches of pages without having to draw bunches of pages. And you could have the pages like bendy in different ways, but that's not what we're doing here right now. That's better. There, see, my brain's getting into it a little bit. I need more of those shapes going on. Those flipping in the air sorts of shapes. Remember, be drawing along with me here. I'm just trying to give you a little entertainment, give you a little, tips here and there while we're just practicing. This is really just you and me practicing together. Yep, that's all this one is really about. So when you're ready to draw, whether it's right now, whether it's later, just sit down and sketch along with me. Draw some books with me. No, I like that one. I think I'm going to do another one similar to that over here. Maybe we'll close that side up a bit more. And we got like the swishy pages doing that sort of thing. And I'm also getting more gestural as I'm going. So earlier, my brain was very focused on having to do very accurate stuff, and now my brain's switching over, going, okay, I can be a little more sketchy. I can be a little more loose. We're just suggesting things rather than actually drawing them. Yep, that's why you practice. Okay, I'm sort of filling up my page. It's getting a little harder to draw down here on the bottom piece. Getting a little loose with this pen too. Getting it to actually start working with me a little bit. I'll try it like this here. You know, when they're drawing it with that finger back there. Throw a couple of extra books. Just sort of suggest those back there. Okay, no, it's too hard to keep drawing it on that page. There's not enough room for me to put my hand down. Oh, yeah. Dan, you're exactly right. I'm not sure who you're referring to, but yeah, this is not about me showing off. This is me just showing you how I would practice if I was on my own. But instead of me just doing it on my own, I'll just do it here on camera with you and kind of talk you through what I'm doing so that you know, maybe have some options for picking up some new stuff while you're practicing. Yeah. Maybe if I get better and I practice more, I will show off a little bit, but this is not me showing off. This is not good enough for me to qualify that. Modern Day James, thank you. I'm glad you love the channel. Appreciate you joining. Okay, so what else can we do here? I almost feel like I want to practice this just a little bit more before I get into doing something else. Let's see, we have the book. This is me trying to remember, suggest what this looks like. Oh, this is not looking good at all. I was just trying to think of something that's fairly simple that I might be able to do from memory. And so I was thinking about a camera. And I was kind of thinking about my camera or similar. And what are the shapes involved with it. And so this is just drawing from it. I have not practiced drawing a camera at all, but I'm trying to go back to basic forms and also thinking about how they're sort of constructed. I think there's like a grippy thing there, and there's probably some sort of like roundy light thing there, and this is like a flash thing. And I want to think there's like a mark for like when you click it in, and it probably has some like stylized line that comes down. And then over here, I want to think it actually like gets bigger on that side or something, and it comes down. It's like this sort of thing. There's like more buttons up there. It's pretty close. But see, this sort of thing, I need to look it up so that, you know, maybe next time if we have a good photo of a camera, then we could practice that and then draw that in multiples. But okay, let's let's open one of these and go over at least one other thing here. Okay, again, computer going really slow here. Okay, no, open. No. Sorry, I'm trying to wait till my my pen catches up with me here. Okay, OBS did pick it up. Okay, cool. So this is a photo from photo collection at photobash.org. Royalty-free images that you can purchase. I purchased the whole set. This particular set of I forgot what they're called. Asian vehicles, something like that. Chinese vehicles. Oh, little pen, you're going so slow. I can't hardly grab anything. Hang on. I'm trying to get it so we can see this whole thing. Well, I've never had it be this delayed. I'm trying to do multiple HD video inputs, the HD version of the photo and the HD version of both of the cameras, and then streaming that, and that's about as much as this little computer can take right now. Okay, and then I can pull this back over. Okay, here we go. Now, what we're going to do is practice this guy. And what we want to do is think about the basic forms going on here so that we can understand it and memorize it to a certain level so that we could draw it from memory. And this is where, join in with this, but we're going to kind of talk through. We don't have all of the information right now. And we don't even care about all the information that's there. So we want to focus on a couple of things. Now, I'm going to switch over my red pen for a little bit, just because they behave really well. I like them. And let's start up here, I think. A little less room for my camera. So the basic form, okay, for those that might not know, your basic forms are your spheres, your cylinders, your cones. You can, I forgot what the actual name is. It's like the pyramid shape. And you can put that in there. Some people do, some people don't. And then your cube. And those are your basic forms. Those are your three-dimensional forms. You could put some guidelines on that to make it look three-dimensional. And this guy, of course, is a cube. That is the simplest form that you could use in order to draw this thing. Now, this isn't a particularly great angle to understand what's going on with this. But we're going to make do, because just sometimes that's how it is. Now, here we want to look at the simplest angle, which is probably that top one. We're going to just draw the form right now. So we'll be a little more free with it. And we're going to draw through as if it was an X-ray. So the top of it is slightly over our eyes. Our eye level is about the top of that window, of that bar just over the window there. And so that means that this side is coming down. And he had a pretty fisheye, a pretty wide lens, which was probably down at like 24 millimeter in order to get this shot, because it's warping things quite a bit from up and down. This is not a telephoto lens. This is like a short lens. That's okay. We'll do that. Then the basic shape then ends right there at that front door, and then you have that rounded bit coming out. But we're going to just focus on this part right now. We particularly want to look at this ratio of the height versus width, and it's a little longer than it is tall, so I'm going to call it somewhere there, close enough. And then we're going to do the X-ray, right, where that other side, we're going to basically be able to see the underneath of that roof here, and then it'd be like that. And that is as simple as you can really make the form of this guy. So what we want to do is then make it more complex and say, all right, this I can do. This is a shape that I could draw very easily. We've been practicing, I say shape, that is a form that we can draw very easily from a lot of different angles. And this is where drawing from imagination comes in, because we know the basic form of that vehicle. Then it allows us to draw that vehicle in a lot of different circumstances, with different perspectives, with no guide, because we know how to arrange that form. But let's make it a little more complex. The next one would be a partial cylinder, like a half a snubbed cylinder right there on the front. Now, if I was actually practicing this, I probably would not go through this step. I'm doing this for you guys. All right, this is just to talk you through what to pay attention to. And if you want to do this step, do this step. All right, don't skip it if you need it. Otherwise, I would just do what I did on that other image, which was I've just draw it in black pen to begin with. And then we want to draw through it because we still want to understand how everything is connecting. So we've got that going on. Now we've got the wheels. The wheels are really going to start making it look like a vehicle. And of course, those are mainly cylinders. Or what is the actual name for that donut shape? I should know the name of it. But I'm tempted to put that in as a basic form. This shape. What do you call that? There's a particular name for that actual shape. It's an oid, something oid, I think. But that's essentially what a tire is, but the wheel is more cylindrical. So he will be here. I made him too big, but okay, whatever. And then there would be one on the other side. And this is a tri-wheel vehicle. Now this is also where you want to start thinking about how this thing is made, right? We want to understand the construction of it as well as the forms of it. Because if you can understand basic construction of something, then you can literally design it and rebuild it, or design something very similar or derivative of it without having to have the reference right there. Because, like, doors, you know how a car door essentially works. You know about where the handle is. You know how it's kind of hinged. You have an idea of what a hinge looks like. And this can allow you to do a lot of stuff. Now, this is a tri-wheel, which means that you're not going to have a wheel up here. You're going to have a wheel in the middle, which means it's going to be overlapped something like that, depending on which way is the wheel turned. And that's going to be the basic shape. And then the windows are taking up almost between a half and a third, right? You're looking at like 2/5, something in that region, coming downwards. So windows about here to not quite half, not quite a little past the third, somewhere in there. And we're looking at a division about here. And then one coming up over that wheel. And that's angled. We're looking at a little hub over that. And this could just be your basic your basic study before you do your major drawing. That's coming about halfway over the wheel. Now that's a good one to remember, that if you want to redraw this, things that are halves, thirds, quarters, those are great to remember because they're really easy to find. So the idea that wherever you place this wheel, that you could put that halfway up is where that door is, or that these doors are about the same size, that's also really good to remember. The simple proportions. And even though it might not look exactly like this one, it's going to go close enough that it's going to look like that vehicle, or a vehicle like it. Then we have the little railing on the top. That's very common on these sorts of Asian vehicles. So they can pack stuff up there, tie them down. There, he's got a little light on the side. Okay. Wheels inset in the middle, and the tire comes out around it. That's an important thing to remember. They usually have multiples there. We won't really talk so much about the inside. I guess you could just say it has a kind of a little dash right there. Because what's going on in the inside is essentially it's a scooter that has a frame built around it. It's kind of like a motorcycle. And I need to refresh my page because it is frozen. No, I don't know if I'm still streaming or not because this has completely frozen. And I don't know what's happening. Internet's been fine up till now. So hang with me if you're still there. I don't know if I'm losing you or not. Interesting. Internet's been fine, and now all of a sudden I can't load anything. Let me check to see if there's something wrong with my router. Forgive me, I'll be right back. Well, count me confused. Sometimes when I have a background program that tries to update while I'm running something else, it will stop that. I'm thinking that might be what's going on here. But yeah, okay, I'm gonna have to stop the stream here because I have no idea if it's continuing, and I can't reload. The page won't reload, so we'll be breaking here. We might start back up depending on whether this is fixable. But thank you for joining me. If it doesn't.